That's mouse ears.
Yes, mouse
Oh.
ears. There you go. And just a little bit lower, okay? Not quite so high. Yeah. And you can move your body a little bit more when you're doing the
Okay.
the line. And action.
Hey, I'm Hilary Duff from Lizzie McGuire. I'm Raven from That's So Raven.
I'm Miley Cyrus from Hannah Montana.
I'm Selena Gomez from Wizards of Waverly Place.
I'm Demi Lovato from Sunny with the Champ.
I'm Ashley Tisdale.
I'm Brenda Song.
It's Christy Carlson Romano.
Debbie Ryan.
And you're watching.
And you're watching.
And you are watching.
And you're watching.
And you're watching.
And you're watching.
You're watching.
And you're watching Disney Channel.
Okay, so imagine this. It's the early aughts and Disney Channel is at the height of its power. Every Friday night, millions of kids gather in front of their TVs for new episodes of shows that everyone, including adults, were talking about. But among them, one show stands out. A show so influential, so undeniably iconic, and was once the peak of children's television. That show? That's So Raven.
Yep, that's me.
Raven-Symoné was everywhere. She wasn't just the star of That's So Raven, she was Disney Channel. Her face was on magazine covers, her voice was in commercials, she was crossing over into all sorts of other shows and movies on the channel, and her name was a shorthand for a good time on Channel 35. Or 40, or 19, or whatever your cable channel number was. What made Raven stand out wasn't just her comedic timing or her ability to pull off these over-the-top costumes, it was her charisma. Raven had that rare kind of star power that made you feel like she was your best friend or your cool older sister. She carried That's So Raven like no one else could. And she didn't just define her show, she defined an entire era of Disney Channel. But here's the thing. Every era of Disney Channel has its standout stars. Some will argue that Miley Cyrus reigned supreme during her Hannah Montana run. Others might say Selena Gomez's Wizards of Waverly Place. Ashley Tisdale did a lot on the channel but isn't brought up nearly as much. And people my age might even say it's Zendaya. So this begs the question, is Raven truly the queen of Disney Channel or is her throne up for debate? Well, to really answer this question, you need to understand how the Disney machine operates. Disney Channel had a system. They knew how to turn their stars into the biggest thing on TV. By the time Raven-Symoné showed up, they were getting there, but they hadn't fully figured it out yet. She definitely paved the way, but someone else came in when the machine was running at full speed, and that changed everything. To understand how, we need to go back to the beginning. This really starts in the late 90s when Ann Sweeney took over as president of the Disney Channel. Ann Sweeney was already well experienced in children's television since the early 80s. She really got her start at Nickelodeon, worked there for 12 or so years, became senior VP of Program Enterprises, and was instrumental in taking Nickelodeon international. That was a huge win, and she went on to help Rupert Murdoch launch FX. She built FX from the ground up as chairman and CEO, but by 1996, she left all that behind to tackle her next challenge, the Disney Channel. Her first order of business was to overhaul everything. As we know, Disney as a brand and company was thriving, and they had been for the past 60 years or so. But it still wasn't really the massive entertainment powerhouse that we think of today. Back then, they were in their Renaissance era, giving us hits after hits. The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. They milked those movies for everything they were worth. If it could be slapped on a lunchbox, backpack, or cereal box, you bet it was. And these films made Disney the pinnacle of animation again. Their theme parks were the same story. Disney World and Disneyland were already the places for family vacations, and they were branching out globally with places like Tokyo Disneyland and Euro Disneyland, which is now Disneyland Paris. That said, Euro Disneyland was struggling financially at the time, so not everything was flawless, but you get the point. Disney was dominating in movies, merch, and theme parks. The only market that they were truly struggling in was TV. When the Disney Channel launched in April 1983, it was kind of like the family-friendly version of HBO or Showtime. Families who wanted to watch America's Family Network had to pay extra on top of their cable plan just to get it. And Disney really leaned into the whole premium family entertainment angle to make it worth the price. For its first decade, the Disney Channel put out all this programming that was like very wholesome and very on brand. There was Welcome to Pooh Corner, a terrifying live-action Winnie the Pooh children's show, and Mousercise, a health, diet, and exercise program aimed at children. Then there were musical variety shows like the all-new Mickey Mouse Club, Dumbo's Circus, and Kids Incorporated, plus a ton of made-for-TV movies and programs like Epcot Magazine to, of course, plug their newest theme park. To pull in more subscribers, they do these like preview events where the channel would be free for a few days. It was like just enough to get families hooked before they would snatch it back and make you pay. And sure, they were hitting their numbers and critics really liked what they were doing, but even then it felt like Disney didn't really know what they wanted the Disney Channel to be. By the early 90s, the programming was all over the place. Yeah, there was still the Disney character stuff, but they also threw in like game shows and concert specials, and even the American Teacher Awards. When the all-new Mickey Mouse Club wrapped in '95, the channel was just kind of there. It didn't have like a real identity. When Ann Sweeney took over as president of Disney Channel, it was clear that the old strategy wasn't working. Disney Channel was nothing compared to its competitors like Nickelodeon, which had the kids TV market on lock. To make the channel relevant, everything needed to change. At the time, Disney Channel wasn't even being marketed as like a 6 through 14 kids channel. The programming was a weird mix of older movies, cartoons, and other like toddler, preschooler sprout shows that didn't exactly capture the audience they were looking for. And then there was the name, The Disney Channel. In 1997, they dropped the and became simply Disney Channel. Then you have the issue of access. Back in the 90s, Disney Channel was a premium cable network, which, like I said, meant you had to pay extra to get it. Ann and her team realized that Disney Channel in more homes was way more valuable than being some exclusive small pay service. The demand just wasn't there. So they transitioned from premium to basic cable, giving cable providers the option to include Disney Channel in their standard packages. In 1996, Disney Channel was available in 15 million homes. By March 1998, 35 million. So now all they needed was programming that would actually keep those kids tuned in. After this, they split the channel into 3 programming blocks, each targeting a specific audience. First, we have Playhouse Disney. These were morning shows for preschoolers. They were cute and educational. Then you have Vault Disney, late night classics for the nostalgic crowd. And then in the middle of this, you have Zoog Disney. This afternoon to late evening block was aimed specifically at tweens and teens. Let's talk about Zoog Disney because honestly, that's the one that really matters here. Zoog Disney launched in August of 1998 and was the most distinct out of all the Disney Channel blocks. It wasn't for little kids and it wasn't for families. It was for middle schoolers. The ones who were too old for Bear in the Big Blue House but still too young for the shows on the WB. The block was hosted by these animated robot type characters called Zoogs who lived in something called the Zether, which was described as a space between your TV and your computer. Of course, this was the early internet, late 90s. It was still dial-up back then, but I'm assuming Disney was probably banking on the novelty of it all. The idea of logging on to zoogdisney.com, playing games, talking to other kids, or even voting on show-related stuff felt futuristic and cool, especially for kids who were just learning how to navigate the internet. When it first launched, the lineup was kind of bare bones. Disney had to rely on shows that were already in syndication, like Growing Pains, Smart Guy, Boy Meets World, and The Babysitter's Club to fill the schedule while they worked on building their own original tween content. Flash Forward was Disney Channel's very first original series, debuting in 1995. It was a coming-of-age comedy drama that followed 2 best friends, Tucker James and Rebecca Fisher, navigating the ups and downs of middle school life. Disney's original programming would increase in the following years with shows like The Famous Jet Jackson in 1998 and So Weird in 1999. The former is probably the most talked about today simply because of the celebrity guest appearances. Britney, Destiny's Child, Rachel McAdams. These shows were good and they definitely built up a solid audience, but they weren't exactly making stars. Not in the way we think of Disney Channel stars today. That all changed with Even Stevens. Premiering in 2000, Even Stevens was a turning point for Disney Channel. It didn't just do well, it set the stage for what a Disney Channel original series could be. It had humor, heart, and its leads, Christy Carlson Romano and young Shia LaBeouf, delivering some of the most iconic comedic performances of the early 2000s. Even Stevens was a big deal. It proved that Disney Channel could produce original programming that was just as good, if not better, than what kids were watching on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. Now, Shia LaBeouf can go to hell, like seriously, but when we're talking about Disney Channel's first true breakout star, it's kind of hard to avoid him. Of course, before Shia, we had the all-new Mickey Mouse Club kids, but they were long gone from the Disney Channel by the time that they got big. Shia, though, he was different. His impact was immediate and undeniable when Even Stevens hit the air. I hate to say it, but he definitely was the standout of the show. The critics agreed too. The show was critically acclaimed, earned Shia a Daytime Emmy, and became one of Disney's earliest hits. More importantly, Shia was one of the first Disney stars to successfully transition into films while still tied to the network. Shia helped establish what it meant to be a Disney star, a relatable and aspirational teen who could carry a hit show and then leap into feature films. But let's be real, he's no Disney queen. Also, the playing field for male child stars has always been different. Shia had the privilege of crossing into more adult roles without hesitation or resistance. People were ready to take him seriously. Meanwhile, Christy Carlson Romano didn't get the same opportunities. For her, this show was the peak of her career, not a stepping stone into serious acting. and that's no shade. That said, even Stevens still proved that Disney Channel could be a star-making machine. It showed that they had the tools to create talent and launch careers. And if even Stevens laid the foundation, then Lizzie McGuire, premiering just a year later, took things to the next level. That's when we meet a 13-year-old Hilary Duff. Before Lizzie McGuire, the biggest thing she'd been in was Casper Meets Wendy, so when this show dropped, it was a game changer. Lizzie McGuire turned her into a relatable, yet aspirational star. But more than that, Lizzie McGuire marked Disney Channel's full pivot towards the tween demographic. By September 2001, Lizzie McGuire was being syndicated on ABC's One Saturday Morning, reaching an even bigger audience. By 2002, Disney Channel started airing it 7 days a week. The thing about Lizzie McGuire is that it didn't feel like a Disney show, not in the way the later ones did. Lizzie wasn't famous, she wasn't magic, she didn't live in a hotel or have some secret identity. She was just a regular girl who got embarrassed in front of her crush and fought with her best friends, and had an annoying little brother who was somehow always in her business. And that was kind of the point. She wasn't, quote, aspirational in the way later Disney girls were. She was awkward, emotional, dramatic in that very specific middle school way where the smallest thing could ruin your life for a week. Even her family felt different. They weren't sitcom-y, her mom was intense in a believable way, her dad was kind of a dork, and her brother was a weird little menace. It didn't feel like a show for little kids, it felt like a show for girls who were just starting to feel like everything was a big deal. And even when the plot lines were silly, the emotional beats always hit. For a lot of people, Lizzie was the first time they saw a version of themselves on TV that wasn't there to be laughed at. She wasn't the cool girl, she wasn't the outcast, she was just normal, which made her feel real. After Lizzie McGuire premiered, Disney wasted no time putting Hilary Duff and that cartoon mascot on every merch there was. They tested the waters with a back-to-school Lizzie McGuire clothing and accessory line at Limited 2. After this, it was a Lizzie McGuire clothing line at Kohl's, themed pillows, a book series, diaries, stationery, and even a Lizzie McGuire CD featuring songs performed by Hilary Duff herself. Yes, you heard that right. While starring in the show, leading Disney Channel original movies, filming the Lizzie McGuire movie, and having her face and cartoon character plastered on every type of merchandise imaginable, Hilary Duff somehow found time to be a pop star. Hilary Duff became the first Disney Channel lead actress to cross over into music through a record deal with Hollywood Records, Walt Disney Records' sister label. At the time, Walt Disney Records handled mostly movie soundtracks and Mickey Mouse compilations, but Hollywood Records had bigger dreams. They wanted to break into the mainstream music industry. Disney's film soundtracks had already had tons of pop stars featured on them in their Renaissance era, and Disney Channel had started integrating more and more pop music into its programming in the late 90s, airing music videos during commercial breaks. While those artists weren't tied to Disney, this move helped position Disney as a cool but safe space compared to MTV's edgier content. It isn't talked about enough how much Britney's early career was tied back into Disney after leaving the all-new Mickey Mouse Club and Baby One More Time was released. I mean, she had concerts that aired on the channel along with NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, Brandy, and all the other teen pop-tarts at the time. But at this point, artists like Britney Spears, whose videos aired on the channel, were becoming too controversial for the family-friendly brand. So Disney needed a solution. They drew a clear line. This was a safe space for families.
There's so much adult stuff on the tube that they just want to make sure what you watch is okay for kids. Parents should watch what their kids watch.
They wanted parents in the room with their kids. That meant ditching outside pop acts and developing talent in-house, artists they could fully control. Hilary Duff was the perfect guinea pig. Jay Landers, the senior VP of A&R at Walt Disney Records, had a plan to bring Disney's classic songs back into the spotlight. This is how we get the first Disney Mania compilation album, where artists at the time recorded reimagined classic Disney songs. Hilary was chosen to sing the Tiki 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 Room, the official song for the Enchanted Tiki Room at Disneyland. It was kind of a test to see if she could hold her own as a performer outside of Lizzie McGuire. If audiences connected with Hilary as Hilary, not just her TV character, Disney would know that they had something bigger on their hands. She then released 2 albums under Walt Disney Records, the Lizzie McGuire soundtrack and her holiday debut, Santa Claus Lane. The Lizzie McGuire movie soundtrack was a huge success. It peaked at number 6 on the Billboard 200, hit even higher on the soundtrack albums chart, and as of today, it sold over 2 million copies and has been certified 2 times platinum. Santa Claus Lane, on the other hand, flop city. But even though Santa Claus Lane didn't really make noise, it established Hilary as more than just an actress. When she signed with Hollywood Records, the gears really started turning. And in 2003, the release of Metamorphosis would change everything. Metamorphosis was a smash hit. It debuted at number 2 with 203,000 copies sold in its first week and peaked at number 1 the next week. It sold over 3 million copies in the US alone and went triple platinum. Then the first 2 singles are classics. You of course have So Yesterday as the lead, song of the century. It topped Billboard's Hot 100 single sales chart, making Hilary the first artist in 4 months who was not affiliated with American Idol to top that chart. Also, for a Disney star to be this high on this specific chart was already a big deal. For people who don't really keep up with Billboard, let me just explain to you the significance of this. That chart ranked the best-selling singles in the US each week, and back then it was based on physical sales. We have to remember that this was before digital downloads and streaming, so people were actually going out and buying her CD single. This was not a TikTok hit. People were actually going out and spending their dollars on her music. Come Clean, aka the Laguna Beach theme song, was released as the second single. Upbeat, fun production, catchy melodies, and lazy lyrics. I love it. The album had a dream team of producers and songwriters who were behind basically every kids channel actor turned pop star. John Shanks, The Matrix, Cara Dioguardi, Charlie Midnight, and Matthew Gerard. These people worked on songs from everyone from Avril Lavigne and Britney Spears to Miranda Cosgrove, Big Time Rush, Ashley Tisdale, Miley Cyrus, and even the Bratz dolls. Anyways, Metamorphosis established Hilary Duff as more than just Lizzie McGuire. She became a teen idol who could attract an audience outside of the Disney Channel. Disney is obviously a great platform, but it definitely comes with a certain image, super wholesome, very family friendly, and like that's great and all, but it also made breaking into top 40 radio a bit of a struggle for Hilary. At first, a lot of programmers thought she was too Disney, too young, and not really a fit for their audience. And like back then, radio was everything. That's how most people discovered new music. If your songs weren't getting airplay, there was no playlisting, autoplay, or streaming farms to save you. Hilary and her team knew this, so they went on this whole campaign trying to win over these programmers. Like they literally met with them in person to show them that she wasn't just some Disney Channel kid. She was serious about music. They really wanted to control the narrative and make sure that they knew that she had maturity and range. You can really see how much they were thinking ahead when you realize that her first 2 singles didn't just air on Disney Channel, they premiered on MTV. And back then, MTV was such a big deal. It wasn't just about showing music videos, it was a cultural powerhouse that could literally make or break your career, especially for younger artists. MTV had shows like TRL where fans could vote for their favorite music videos, and making the video where you'd get a behind the scenes look at how those videos came together. Then the video would premiere afterward. It was huge for building that connection with fans. And like MTV was fully behind Hilary. They didn't just play her music videos, they promoted her as an artist, showcasing her personality and her music in a way that reached beyond Disney fans. And the videos for So Yesterday and Come Clean were designed to be cool enough for MTV, but still clean enough that parents wouldn't freak out. After this, Hilary starred in 4 box office hits, including the Lizzie McGuire movie and Cheaper by the Dozen, one of which remains her highest grossing film to date. Meanwhile, Lizzie McGuire the show cemented Disney Channel as a true competitor to Nickelodeon, something that seemed impossible for decades. For years, Nickelodeon dominated children's cable television, and for a while, Disney Channel couldn't keep up. Lizzie McGuire changed that and showed Disney the power of a strong lead star with universal appeal. Hilary's success highlighted 3 important things for Disney Channel. Show-led stars could act, sing, and sell merchandise outside of their shows. Tween-focused storytelling was a gold mine when combined with family-friendly values. And cross-platform appeal was the key to building a star's empire. This strategy would soon be applied to every Disney Channel star afterwards, leading us to That's So Raven. Premiering on January 17, 2003, That's So Raven became a game changer for Disney Channel. The show followed Raven Baxter, a high schooler with psychic visions. These visions often led to misunderstandings and elaborate plans to fix future events, only for things to spiral out of control and wacky hijinks ensue. You know, Disney Channel stuff. That's So Raven redefined what a Disney Channel sitcom could achieve. As quiet as it's kept, this show paved the way for every single show on the Disney Channel that followed. For starters, That's So Raven was the first Disney Channel sitcom to be shot multicam with a live studio audience. Multicam sitcoms are TV shows filmed using multiple cameras at the same time, usually on a set in front of a live audience or with a laugh track added later. Up until this point, all of Disney Channel's sitcoms were single cam, which were shot more like a movie, using one camera at a time to capture scenes. Unlike single cam, multicam sitcoms feel like a live performance, often having laughter cut in between jokes, fewer locations, and mostly on colorful sets with tons of bright lighting, which makes them cheaper and faster to produce. It's what sets shows like Friends or How I Met Your Mother apart from, say, Modern Family or Abbott Elementary. Disney Channel was really playing catch up. By the early 2000s, Nickelodeon had already proven the success of multicam sitcoms in children's television. Shows like All That, Kenan and Kel, and The Amanda Show really resonated with kids in the 90s. These shows were not just hits within their target demographic, they had mainstream popularity. But it wasn't like multicam sitcoms were non-existent on the channel. Boy Meets World, Sister Sister, and Smart Guy reruns on the channel showed that the demand was there. That's when we meet Michael Porrais. He was a seasoned television writer with credits on shows like The Facts of Life, Saved by the Bell, and Roseanne. In the early 2000s, he was searching for his next big project when he learned that Disney Channel was looking to do an original multicam sitcom. His first couple of pitches didn't land, but then he was paired with Susan Sherman, another writer on the network who had a script ready. Together, they reworked Susan's initial concept into Absolutely Psychic, a female buddy comedy about a teenage girl named Rose who could see the future in her non-psychic best friend. It was meant to be similar to Laverne and Shirley. In the lead role of Rose, they cast Chanel Workman, who you may know as the older sister of Ariel Winter, and for Rose's quirky best friend, they went with 15-year-old Raven-Symoné. Raven originally was really going for the best friend role, which makes sense. Up until this point, she had only really played the best friend, the oldest sister, or the sassy little cousin. But this audition showed everyone that she could do more than be the funny sidekick. She came in with her lines memorized, had great comedic timing, undeniable charisma, and nailed it with her physical comedy. Once the pilot was filmed, test audiences couldn't get enough of her, and it became super clear that Raven was a star, like the kind of star that could carry an entire show. So the script got a rewrite, putting Raven front and center, and that's how That's So Raven was born. And honestly, the fact that she wasn't even considered to play the main character before Ariel Winter's sister is insane to me, because Raven had already proven herself as a seasoned performer. She literally started working before she could even form a full sentence. Her breakout role was Olivia Kendall, Lisa Bonet's stepdaughter on The Cosby Show. She joined the cast at just 3 years old, and the audience loved her. When The Cosby Show wrapped in 1992, she joined Hanging with Mr. Cooper as Nicole Lee and stayed on until the series finale in 1997. Somewhere in the middle of all that, she made her movie debut in The Little Rascals as Stimmy's girlfriend, but acting wasn't her only thing. Oh no. Raven launched her music career and had a hip-hop album as a kindergartner. Over the years, she kept stacking credits. Dr. Dolittle, Disney Channel's Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, guest spots on Fresh Prince in a Different World, and even voice roles on The Proud Family and Kim Possible. By the time That's So Raven rolled around, Raven-Symoné wasn't just a child star, she was a triple threat entertainer. That's So Raven just reintroduced her as a teen icon, and she officially became the face of Disney Channel's next big sitcom. The show helped define Disney Channel's golden era and paved the way for the next group of stars. This show is so important for a plethora of reasons, and I think when we're having this discussion about the queen of Disney, we ignore how much Raven was really the blueprint. For starters, the show and the main character are named after her, marking her as one of the first Black women to have her name in the title of a comedy series. This move perfectly centered Raven, making her the undeniable focal point of the show. Secondly, Raven sings the theme song, and this is the first time within this entire era the main character sings the theme song, and this quickly becomes a trend with the Disney Channel theme songs of shows after That's So Raven. Raven-Symoné perfectly embodied everything a Disney Channel star was gonna be. She could act, sing, and entertain. Her comedic timing was unmatched. Off screen, she had this charisma that made her a role model for so many kids. But most importantly, Raven Baxter was Disney's first Black female lead, and the show had a predominantly Black cast, which was rare at the time. Sure, Disney had Black leads with shows like The Famous Jet Jackson and The Proud Family, but That's So Raven took it to another level, especially as live action portrayals of Black girlhood were disappearing from the mainstream. After Moesha ended in 2001, there was almost nothing filling that gap, so Raven really came in at the perfect time. She felt inspirational, confident, relatable, and she was a curvy girl, which contrasted with these skinny, white, blonde, blue-eyed girls that were kind of running Hollywood at the time. She became a role model for future Black stars. When That's So Raven premiered in January 2003, it was an instant hit, quickly pulling in around 2 million viewers an episode. By season 3, it surpassed cast, Lizzie McGuire. The 2005 two-part special, Country Cousins, where Raven played not just herself, but most of her family members, brought in over 4 million viewers. This show was really peak Disney Channel. The loud colors, over-the-top humor, and exaggerated delivery. Like it was really the blueprint. It was a clear departure from Lizzie McGuire and even Stevens. But unlike those shows and those stars, Disney didn't really know what to do with Raven-Symoné, the brand. You have Cheetah Girls happening at the same time. While That's So Raven was on hiatus after its first season, Raven signed on to star in The Cheetah Girls, a Disney Channel original movie about 4 friends who become a girl group. The Cheetah Girls was Disney's first ever made-for-TV movie musical, and it crushed the ratings. With a worldwide audience of 84 million viewers, the DVD sold over 800,000 copies. Raven was the biggest star of the cast as Galleria, alongside Adrienne Bailon as Chanel and Keely Williams as Aqua, both from the real-life girl group 3LW. Fun fact, Solange was actually supposed to play Aqua, but Matthew pulled her out so that she could focus on her solo career. The story was based on Deborah Gregory's book series, which followed a group of black girls in New York City who loved music, fashion, and wanted to be famous. But when it came to adapting it for TV, Disney Channel wanted to expand the group beyond just black girls so that kids from different backgrounds could see themselves in the characters. That's how Sabrina Bryan ended up being cast as Dorinda. And let's just say, if Deborah Gregory came to them with a book where it was all white girls, the cast would have stayed the same. The Cheetah Girls was still groundbreaking for its time. All 4 leads were black and Latina girls. It had a black director, a black writer, and Deborah Chase and Whitney Houston as executive producers. This level of diversity both on and off screen wasn't something very common in these kind of spaces in the early 2000s. With this being Disney Channel's first movie musical, it of course got a soundtrack. Initially, Disney Records hesitated to create a standalone soundtrack for the movie, but Deborah Chase pushed for it. When the soundtrack finally dropped, it peaked at number 33 and went double platinum. This took the Cheetah Girls from a movie to a whole franchise, eventually spawning a real-life girl group. This of course would allow Raven-Symoné, Disney's it girl at the time, to transition into a music artist while starring in one of their most successful shows and movies. It all lined up. She could hold a note, had amazing charisma, and the platform. But Raven just didn't want it. She had no desire to be a part of the Cheetah Girls group and opted out of signing with them. She only did like 1 live performance with them, and outside of the first 2 movie soundtracks, she was not featured on any of the songs on their albums. She actually said that this was because she wanted to focus on her solo music career. So let's talk about that. She already had 2 albums out before Disney, plus a That's So Raven soundtrack under her belt. So when she released her first album with Hollywood Records, This Is My Time, it seemed like things were really gonna pop off for her. I mean, it debuted with 19,000 copies in its first week, and let's not pretend like she didn't have some bangers, like What Is Love and Underrated Bop. But the album didn't really resonate with audiences. I don't think most people today could name a single song off this album. Had Raven really wanted a successful music career, she would have been better off staying with the Cheetah Girls and signing with them. The Cheetah Girls were out here performing in sold out arenas, raking in millions, and Raven was performing at music festivals and state fairs. From the videos I've seen, her solo shows lacked the spectacle. Watching her solo Disney Mania performances feels so much more dynamic than her live sets. Maybe because the camera keeps cutting and she's lip syncing, but still. To be fair, her songs did get a lot of play on Disney soundtracks. 4 of them made it onto movies like The Lion King 1.5 and The Princess Diaries 2, but still her solo albums never cracked the top 50. Even with the second That's So Raven soundtrack bringing us the iconic Some Call It Magic, a Disney Channel classic, her music career just didn't hit the same heights as the Cheetah Girls, or Hilary Duff for that matter. And that's the thing with Hilary Duff and Raven-Symoné, they were really the prototype of Disney stars. I feel like right now it's important to mention that unlike Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, Disney Channel did not have traditional commercial breaks with third-party ads. They used this time to advertise their own company, its shows, movies, merchandise, theme parks, and most importantly, its stars. Music videos, show promos, and bumpers, just constant exposure for Disney's stars. Hilary Duff and Raven-Symoné were among the first people to film the Disney Channel Wand IDs. Disney worked overtime to make sure that these shows succeeded. For example, nearly a year before That's So Raven premiered, the channel aired non-stop ads and even a music video for the theme song. The premiere night featured 4 episodes, and then it becomes Disney Channel's most successful series. By 2005, That's So Raven was the channel's highest rated show and became the first Disney Channel original series to break the 65 episode rule. It eventually ran for 100 episodes, making it the longest running series on the network at the time and the first to spawn a spinoff. Cory in the House. The show also became a merchandising juggernaut with novels, dolls, board games, a fragrance, and even video games. By 2006, merchandise from the series had grossed over $400 million. One of the only things that really separates That's So Raven from the other big Disney Channel shows is that it never got a feature-length movie. Not because there wasn't demand, but because Raven was booked. She was filming other Disney projects, The Cheetah Girls, Kim Possible, Xenon, Fillmore, and eventually Tinkerbell. Her face was everywhere. Raven was one of the first examples of Disney fully leaning into star-led sitcoms, and it worked. But even with everything Raven accomplished, there was one show that would eventually eclipse her. It was developed around the same time and actually beat out a proposed Lizzie McGuire spinoff during the 2004 to 2005 pilot season. That show? Hannah Montana. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into Miley and Hannah Montana's legacy here. You've seen the 2-hour Miley video. But just to set the stage, Hannah Montana changed the way Disney did business. It was a sitcom, sure, but it was also a music project, a live tour, a film franchise, and a full-blown empire. Disney had already started testing the waters with music when Lizzie McGuire took off, and Hilary Duff was the first real attempt at turning one of their stars into a pop act. And to be fair, it worked. Metamorphosis was huge, but once Lizzie McGuire ended, the momentum got a little harder to hold on to. Hollywood Records didn't really seem to know what to do with her long term, and Hilary clearly had other things going on, movies, red carpets, press, all of that. She was still putting out albums and they were selling well, but it didn't always seem like the music was being positioned as the main thing. Then came Dignity, which was such a shift. It was mature, more cohesive, and kind of ahead of the curve. With Love became her biggest single, and the whole album leaned into this like slick electronic dance pop sound that was just about to take over radio, and it really felt like she was carving out a new lane for herself. But right when it seemed like she might double down on music, she stepped away. Not in a dramatic way, just kind of quietly took a break. That said, Hilary's music career was definitely bigger than Raven's. Like, she had multiple albums, some really iconic songs, and a solid fan base. Raven's impact, on the other hand, was different. She broke barriers, anchored one of the most watched shows on the network, and was already a household name by the time That's So Raven even premiered. But by the time Hannah Montana came along, Raven was a little older, early 20s, at a time when Disney was clearly narrowing in on that 6 to 14-year-old core demographic. What made Hannah Montana stand out was that both Miley Cyrus, the person, and Miley Stewart, the character, were 14 years old at the time. The show also built on the foundation laid by Lizzie McGuire and That's So Raven. A young female lead with strong comedic chops, family-focused storytelling. All three shows featured parents and siblings who were very important to the story. They all had tight-knit friend groups consisting of a guy and a girl. Lizzie had Miranda and Gordo, Raven had Chelsea and Eddie, and Miley had Lily and Oliver. Raven and Hannah both lived double lives. Raven had the secret ability to see the future. In Hannah Montana, Miley had a secret double life as a pop star. All three of them also took their looks very seriously. Miley's outfits were campier and more outlandish, but like Lizzie and Raven, she served looks, and the Disney shows that came after it would become progressively campy and over the top. Another tradition that Hannah Montana followed was having the lead actress sing the theme song, something, as we know, Raven had cemented as a Disney staple. But Hannah Montana takes it a step further. The show's concept of a pop star living a secret life meant music wasn't just a side product, it was integral to the story. Each episode featured original songs that Disney could market as singles, albums, and live performances, giving the show a cultural reach that Lizzie and Raven never had. As we've already discussed, music played a huge role in how Disney Channel was able to break into the mainstream and basically eclipse Nickelodeon in the process in some ways. They'd already seen glimpses of how music could work for them. You have the Mouseketeers. The Cheetah Girls proved musicals could bring in big audiences. And of course, Disney had always known the power of a good musical. But when it came to Disney Channel's scripted comedies, musicals were a hard no. The network didn't think they'd ever be successful. So how did we get here? Well, musicals and TV shows have always been one of those why not ideas. You know, you have the memory loss episode, or the Groundhog Day episode, or the body swap episode. So why not the musical episode? Buffy did it, The Simpsons did it, and even Stevens would do it too. On January 25th, 2002, Disney Channel aired Influenza, the musical. In Influenza, Ren wakes up sick and bedridden, but she refuses to stay home because she wants a perfect attendance award. She drags her barely functioning body to school, and that's when things get weird. Everything has turned into a musical. The principal sings the morning announcements. Louie, Twitty, and Tawny break into a full number about gym class. Ruby and Nelson have a science project duet. There's a whole cafeteria performance. And then, easily the best song in the episode, 6 Period. It's this huge group number. Ren, barely standing, gives her presentation on the moon landing with one single fact: we went to the moon in 1969, because that's all she managed to read before her computer died. And obviously she gets an F, but then she wakes up and it was all a fever dream. This episode becomes one of the most iconic in the show's entire run. Disney saw the reaction and was like, oh wait, kids actually like musicals? Got it. So they went to the Even Stevens showrunners and said, hey, can you do the same thing over on That's So Raven? And so they did. In the That's So Raven musical episode, Raven has a vision that someone from her favorite talent competition show, Undercover Superstar, is coming to her school undercover to scout new talent. Naturally, she can't keep it to herself and ends up telling the entire school. Well, technically it was Chelsea, but now everyone thinks they're getting discovered. Kids are performing in the hallway, the cafeteria, the gym, in study hall, anywhere that might be within view of the mystery scout. But the gag is that the guy Raven thinks is a talent scout is actually just the janitor, but not even a real janitor. He's working undercover for the health department. And to make matters worse, Raven does end up meeting the real scout, who's played by Paula Abdul, but assumes she's just another janitor and refuses to perform. It's classic Raven. And it worked. Just like with Even Stevens, the episode was a hit. So now Disney has proof. Musicals plus sitcoms equal ratings. And yes, the Cheetah Girls had come out by then, but that was treated like a one-off. Disney wasn't planning to turn it into a whole thing. They just happened to strike gold. And then the sequel pulled in 8.1 million viewers. They went on 3 tours. But it wasn't until the Even Stevens and Raven episodes that Disney seemed to realize that this could be a formula. And that formula is eventually what led to High School Musical. The movie premiered in 2006 with a $4.2 million budget and drew in 7.7 million viewers. That was just the beginning. The soundtrack for the first movie went quadruple platinum, selling millions of copies, and the sequel, High School Musical 2, still holds the record for the most watched Disney Channel premiere with 17.2 million viewers. After 2 sequels, one of which got a theatrical release, the franchise had raked in $4 billion. I don't think I could even put into words just how much of a cultural reset this franchise was. And it all started with those first 2 episodes, plus Cheetah Girls. So when Hannah Montana went into production, Disney Channel was ready for this moment. After the Cheetah Girls, Hilary, Duff, and High School Musical, Disney recognized the power of tying music to its shows and movies. By the time Hannah Montana premiered, Miley was already performing at Disney concerts, opening for the Cheetah Girls on tour, and dropping the Hannah Montana soundtrack. The album debuted at #1, beating out My Chemical Romance and John Legend, becoming the first TV soundtrack to do so, to beat out them and be #1. It was the perfect integration of TV, music, and branding that Disney had been building for years. Miley wasn't just following a blueprint, she was the blueprint. Everything aligned perfectly, and Hannah Montana became a cultural phenomenon that solidified Miley Cyrus as Disney's ultimate star. By season 2 of the show, Hannah Montana became a household name and Disney's crown jewel. Hannah was everywhere, on the TV, on the radio, toy shelves, and clothing racks. And Miley Stewart mirrored Miley Cyrus's real-life career. I mean, the fact that her real-life dad also played her former famous dad on the show was a major selling point. And while other Disney stars were spread thin across multiple shows and projects, Hannah Montana was a perfectly self-contained package. Miley Cyrus was Hannah Montana, and that's about it. By 2008, Hannah Montana helped drive Disney's tween merchandise sales to over $1 billion, up from $400 million the year before. They capitalized on this success by introducing Miley as a solo artist with the 2007 double album, Hannah Montana 2: Meet Miley Cyrus. The album split Miley's personas. One half featured Hannah Montana songs to promote the series and merchandise, while the other showcased Miley's original music. The Hannah tracks kept the Disney Channel watchers engaged, while the Miley songs pushed her into the top 40 market, reaching listeners who weren't even watching Disney Channel. The album debuted at #1. This led to the Best of Both Worlds tour, and the tour and its film cemented Miley's status as a star beyond Disney. At the same time, Miley was showing the world that, yes, I'm Hannah Montana, but I'm more than just Hannah Montana. That's something Raven-Symoné never fully got to do. Disney didn't really brand Raven-Symoné as Raven-Symoné. She was Raven Baxter, or Galleria from the Cheetah Girls. It's true that Miley benefited from the groundwork laid by Raven, Hilary, and even Kylie Pratt, but she also arrived at the perfect time. By 2008, Hannah Montana was able to become not just a show, but an entity. Raven paved the way, but Miley reaped the benefits of a system that could elevate her to a level Raven never reached. Raven wasn't even bigger than her peers at the time, and that's why That's So Raven was able to go on for so long and break that 65 episode rule and go on for 100 episodes in 4 seasons. The threat of losing Raven to non-Disney projects wasn't nearly as high as it had been with Hilary, so they managed to keep her for a 4th season and gave her a producer credit. And unfortunately for Raven, at no point in her career did she become too big for Disney. I mean, she stays affiliated with the network and its sister channels for nearly a decade after this and is still on the channel to this day. Back to the Hannah Montana era. By its 2nd season, it was the #1 basic cable show for tweens and kids over 6. Miley's success drove the show. She filmed during the week, and then she did concerts, movies, press, photo shoots, and recording music. By this point, That's So Raven had ended, and Miley was basically the only big star on Disney Channel until Wizards of Waverly Place. Sure, Dylan and Cole Sprouse were there, and Corey in the House was on air, and Zac Efron was doing press for Hairspray while filming the last High School Musical movie. But let's be real, no one ever really cared about the guys of Disney Channel, at least not to the level that they cared about the girls, which is a whole different conversation. Even when Selena and Demi entered the scene, Miley was already miles ahead of them, and Disney had marketed Miley and her music so differently. I mean, Selena Gomez was more of a singer on Hannah Montana than her own show, and Sonny never really singing was a huge plot point. Miley was the biggest star on the network, and she was doing everything the girls before her were doing and more. I mean, this girl hosted SNL right after Hannah Montana. The other girls just weren't doing it like that. Everyone cared about Miley Cyrus. It wasn't just kids anymore. Everyone cared about Miley Cyrus. And race 100% matters when we're having this conversation. Like, both Hilary and Raven shot the cover of Vanity Fair with all the other huge young stars of the time in 2003. And while Kylie Pratt, Solange, Bow Wow, Aaron Meeks, and Christina Milian were featured, Raven was the only black girl on the cover. And even then, she was on the fold-out flap. Just based on race alone, Miley was always going to be more marketable than Raven. Compared to the white leads on the channel, Raven was the only black girl to lead a major sitcom on the channel for a while. Even on shows like Ant Farm or Shake It Up, which Zendaya co-led, outside of China and Zendaya, the cast was overwhelmingly white. So the fact that Raven-Symoné could become such a huge Disney star was rare. She played a key role in building Disney Channel into what it became. And that's also not to diminish Miley's talent, but Raven laid the foundation for Miley's success. Miley was Disney's golden goose during its prime, and Hannah Montana was like lightning in a bottle. Nickelodeon even tried to copy the formula with shows like Big Time Rush and Victorious. Miley's fame was next level. She was world famous before leaving Hannah Montana. She's been one of very few Disney stars to sustain that success for this long. You can still feel Miley's impact. Raven hasn't really done anything major in the past decade when it comes to continuing to be relevant for today's generation. When Miley became the youngest Disney legend at D23, some people pointed out that Disney called Raven back and not Miley. But Raven hadn't been doing any consistent work up until then. I believe she left The View to do Raven's Home, and that's no shade. What I will give Raven is that That's So Raven is a better show. The jokes hold up better than Hannah Montana, which feels cheesy and very of its time. Sweet Life and Wizards of Waverly Place aged better too, but Miley was still that girl. When Hannah Montana ended, people genuinely thought Disney Channel was doomed because it was such a defining show. Miley was the people's princess. Her impact was unmatched, but we can't deny Raven's impact as well. When it really comes down to it, Raven and Miley are the only true contenders for the title, but that still begs the question, who holds the crown? While Raven pioneered Disney's sitcom power, Miley's success changed how Disney marketed its stars. Miley's music career is unmatched in Disney Channel history. Raven's legacy is more rooted in Disney nostalgia, you know, she's the OG, while Miley's impact goes beyond the Disney brand. Miley has been able to achieve mainstream celebrity status for significantly longer. If we're talking purely about Disney Channel dominance, then sure, Raven-Symoné is the queen of Disney. She defined the channel's golden era and paved the way for the other girls to come on the channel and tug on her wig a little bit. But if we're considering the overall impact on pop culture and Disney's brand growth, Miley Cyrus takes the crown. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really put on my thinking cap for this one, pulled out my dictionary, but I don't know, I feel like I've settled the matter. Anyways, sorry to Raven-Symoné, she's an icon, I love her. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Bye.